How's it going, everyone? My name is Michael SK, and welcome back to Higurashi When They Cry, Chapter 5. We ended, ooh, this is getting jazzy. We just ended the 10th chapter. I know, chapters in a chapter. It's very convoluted and fun with all the titling. But we did just finish a scene here. We were in the Sonozaki underground dungeon talking with Mion, and, yeah, their grandmother is indeed dead. And Shion is showing a little bit of craziness, you know, just a wee bit. And it makes me wonder, it makes me wonder who we were talking with in Chapter 2 after the Watanagashi, because it's very likely that as we go forward here, Shion's going to be taking Mion's place. I don't know if that explains anything, but the crazy person that we may have seen in Chapter 2 probably wasn't Mion, or anywhere close. There's a lot of questions still to be had, and answers that should be coming up at some point, I don't know. Let us read these notebook pages. That's like been the entirety of our tips in this game. And also, just want to throw this out, the last episode I was having some recording difficulties. I don't know what was up with OBS, because I had no crash logs or anything of the sort. The program was just closing, and that's never happened to me before. It maybe happened one time when I was testing some VR shit, but that's like totally different. I have no idea what was happening here. I'd like to say that my computer was just acting a little funky. I was reinstalling some stuff, and while doing so, or I guess updating some stuff, so that means things have to reinstall. While that was happening, I noticed my mouse pointer was acting a little, like, it was like getting stuck here and there, so like if you move your mouse pointer around, it'll like kind of jitter a little bit. Now I know that's not normal, so I think maybe my computer was just acting up a little bit. Hopefully that's not a sign of things to come, and everything is okay now, because I recorded for like 2 hours the other day and everything was fine. I wasn't planning to kill the hag so quickly. I was going to kill her anyway, but it was too soon. People would normally assume that the Sonozaki family operates as a hierarchy, but that's not true. It's actually more like a system of government. Several ministries stem from the main family, and each forms a hierarchy of its own. These ministries don't communicate with one another. Excuse me, God. The people who belong to a given ministry don't know what other ministries are doing. That way, the Sonozaki family's dealings are kept perfectly secret. Of course, the most important people in the family govern several ministries. They know, of course, about their own ministries. And they know a little bit about the ministries their relatives run. But none of them know everything. There are ministries that work in the open. There are ministries that work unseen. And there are some smaller ones that Oryo runs herself. Mion seems to know about most of them, but she doesn't necessarily know them all. In fact, she doesn't know about the curse, or she didn't. Considering that, the fact that the hag died before I can interrogate her is a huge loss. This does explain how she did die. We knew of her death. She was in the well in Chapter 2. The head of the Kimiyoshi family was the one who called the main house most often after the 5th year's curse. My father called the second most. My parents were still high in the hierarchy, but the stir caused by my mother's disownment still hung over us, so we got treated as outcasts. So the fact that my father received so many calls proved how much the hag valued us despite the distance at which we were kept, demonstrating her own two-faced respect for both sides of the coin. My father seems to be in charge of the Intelligence Bureau. He reported police information, gossip, and rumors going around in the Yakuza business to the hag. He silences, stirs, and distorts the information at her request. By the way, my servant Kasai is an old friend of my father's. Yes, we knew that. That must be why Kasai knows many things. But I don't know if my father is involved in the curse's execution. My assumption is that although he gathered information on the police investigation about the case, he wasn't involved in the execution itself. The fact that my father and the hag have this close connection isn't widely known. People know that she uses his information network, but they don't look very far beyond that. Oh, excuse me, Jesus. I'm like dying tonight. In the same way, it's possible that a curse execution team exists under the hag's direct control. People just aren't aware of it. Yeah, I'm totally following along here. Nothing's confusing or convoluted in any sort of way. Definitely not. Alright, let's officially jump in. Now this is the real jazz. I was having such a happy dream. Satoshi-kun was in the dream. He was leading his normal, everyday life. He was back in the baseball team. Irie and I acted normally around him because we knew that's how mature people should act. We welcomed him back as if he had been here with us the whole time. Although he hits well in practice sessions, he still doesn't do well in a real game. Come on, Satoshi-kun. 3 strikes already. I'm cheering for you. And then Satoshi-kun pouted as he mumbled. I felt tears pouring down my face. Sniffle, sniffle.
Satoshi-kun. Satoshi-kun.
The happy dream faded out with my sobs. The harder I tried to focus on it, the faster it faded. Soon it was all gone. I could see the bright morning sun through a crack in the curtains. I was in Mion's room at the Sonozaki house. When did I come back? I was crouching in the corner of the room and crying. A dream is a dream. I wished I hadn't woken up. But one must wake up from a dream. We live in a world where there are no dreams, and that's why we always wake up. But I wasn't sure if I was the only one dreaming that dream, because I felt like Satoshi-kun was right beside me.
Satoshi-kun? 帰ってきてくれたんだ.
There was no reply. That was the rule. If it was Satoshi-kun, I wish I'd smile at me just once. But Satoshi-kun's presence faded away as if he were never there to begin with. I heard the phone ring by the front door. Oh, that's right. I was the only one in the house now. I had to answer it. I got up to walk to the front door. I felt unsteady, so I put my hand on the wall to support myself. I hardly got any sleep. It was like I had a bad cold. The phone continued to ring. I probably didn't have to answer it actually, but I was still half asleep, and all I could think of was answering the phone.
はい、園崎です。
朝早くにすみませんな。君吉でございます。おばあちゃんまだお休みですかな?
Hahaha. Yeah, she's asleep. It was Uncle Kimiyoshi.
はい。昨日のが答えたみたいです。しばらく寝かせておこうと思います。
そうだね。ミオンちゃんもこれから学校だよね。じゃあ枕元に伝言を置いといてもらってもいいかな。
わかりました。何と伝言しましょう。
昨日の件で緊急に役員会を開くことになったんだけど、それをね、今日の夕方の5時から神社の集会所でって伝えてもらえる？
わかりました。伝えておきます。
This is how she knew. This is how Shion knew. Or Mion or whoever. This is all coming together. That there will be a meeting. And now she has to follow Kimiyoshi. She has to learn of where he will be. He's gonna be a victim today. Or at least I think that's how it's gonna go. Shion's gonna start killing people. As soon as I put the phone down, it rang again.
はい、園崎です。
早朝から申し訳ありません。葛西と申しますが、ミオンさんですか？おはようございます。
葛西さん、おはようございます。
シオンさんはまだそちらにいらっしゃいますか？
I wasn't panicked, but I hesitated. I could tell him no, or I could play both Mion and Shion.
シオンはさっき顔を洗ってました。呼んできますね。
I decided to play two parts. I went back and forth down the hallway and picked up the phone again.
葛西、おはようです。
おはようございます、シオンさん。今日は登校されますか？
するわけないです。たるいし。
まあそんなとこだとは。それでシオンさん、沖宮へ帰る足はありますか？若いのに迎えに行かせますが。
君吉のおじいちゃんとかそのあたりに送ってもらおうかなと思ってます。私のことは放っておいてくれて OK です。
親父さんから出席日数だけは守らせるように厳命を受けていますので、私の小指のためにもご協力をいただきたいもんです。
まあ気が向いたら努力します。それより葛西、聞いてる？
聞いてるとは？
昨日のあれ。
一応は。恐ろしい話です。
これまでのタタリの犠牲者はさ、みんなダム戦争の時の戦犯だったわけじゃない？それが今年はちょいと路線が違う感じですよね。どう思う？
さあ、私の預かり知るところの話ではありません。
Kasai wasn't the type to talk too much. If it was about something complicated, he usually responded like that.
夕べの犠牲者の2人がどうしてお社様のタタリを受けたか知ってる？
いいえ。
実は夕べなんか綿流しの最中に最後殿にこっそり忍び込んだらしいよ。鍵を針金か何かで開けて。
Kasai went silent for a while. I held my breath while waiting to see how he responded. I expected him, to say that he couldn't believe those people were chosen as victims just for sneaking into a storehouse. God. I expected him to say that it was just too unrealistic.
そうですか。バカなことを。
まあ富武さんもそのあたりには疎いよそ者だったってことだね。
I went along with Kasai, but I felt disturbed on the inside. Kasai didn't wonder why breaking into the ritual storehouse would justify their deaths. I'd known Kasai for a long time, which is why I knew there was a heavy meaning to what he said.
でさ、葛西、実は私もなんだけど。
Oh, she's just telling somebody right away?
入ったんですか？
What the fuck?
最後殿に？シオンさんが？
高野さんに一緒にどうって誘われてさ。
Bro, Shion is one crazy bitch.
高野さんと富武さん、そして私と、ほら、前原屋敷に引っ越してきた圭一って男の子と一緒に4人で。
I heard Kasai sighing heavily, even though he didn't say... Oh my fuck. It did crash again. Oh my god. OBS actually crashed again. I have no idea what's happening. I have no idea. Alright, hold on a moment. Alright, we're going again. I made one teeny tiny adjustment. We'll see if that helps. I have no idea what's happening. I literally recorded a game for 2 hours yesterday. And it recorded just fine. I have no idea what's happening. Fuck everything I said in the beginning of this. If it happens again, we'll have to cut this episode short yet again. Even though he didn't say a word, I could tell he was shocked. It's possible that a part of this was cut off too. Like, there's nothing I can do about that. I'd never known him to act this way before.
シオンさん、去年ああいう一件があったばっかりなんですよ。今度はどうけじめをつけられるおつもりですか？
去年が爪3枚だったから奮発して5枚くらい言っとく？あ、ごめん。でもふざけてるわけじゃないんだよ。そりゃ私だってやばいとこだって認識はあったよ。少しは。でもさ、そこまでやばいことなわけ？
シオンさんは仮にも園崎本家に縁ある方です。今さらそんなこと言ってまかり通ると思いますか？
っていうか、だって私ずっと沖宮。ばあさんに嫌われて以降、Hinamizawaにはほとんど近づいてもいない。その上、学園に閉じ込められて過ごしてたんですよ。そんなの私が知るはずないじゃない。
I heard another sigh from Kasai. That sigh told me my excuses would be useless.
シオンさん、私はあなたの味方のつもりです。極力シオンさんを信じてあげたいと思っています。ですが、 いくら私でもかばいきれないことがあります。第一、
ごめん、お姉が来たから切ります。じゃね。
Why did she even tell him? I interrupted Kasai and hung up. Yo, I don't understand her. Her actions are continuing to confuse me. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear Kasai reject me, he who had been my ally all my life.
チェ、参ったな。
I could hear the sound of the cicadas. The sound made it feel like I was being cooked on a huge frying pan, making a sizzling noise. I couldn't help feeling remorseful. Now I knew that sneaking into the ritual storehouse wasn't a laughing matter, but I really didn't know it at the time. Sure, the door was locked, so they didn't want anyone to go in. Then why did they change the lock? What did they say? I think it was that Rika-chama said that the previous lock was too heavy for her, so she had it changed to that cheap one. That was how Takano-san broke in. If the heavy lock was still there, this wouldn't have happened. I slapped my own forehead. Then I took a deep breath. I had to calm down. What was the point of fussing now? I'd already passed the point of no return. There was no use thinking otherwise. The hag was already dead. Even if she wasn't, she was now at the bottom of the well. Therefore, it was already past the point where I could just cut my fingers off in apology. Yeah, sure. I felt so unstable. I'd walked on the fence around the swings at the park before, as if I was walking on a tightrope. It was fun even if I fell. It was only a very short distance. But it wouldn't have been fun if I were up really high. At that very moment, I was in fact already on a tightrope that was a lot higher than the fence at that park. As soon as I took a step, the rope behind me would vanish. I couldn't step back because there was nothing behind me. That was, in short, the current situation I found myself in. Just standing in one spot was all I could do. Even if I never took another step, I'd fall if I wasn't careful. If I forced myself to walk, the danger would only increase. But if I didn't move, I would fall eventually. I couldn't see what was ahead of me. Oh, excuse me. There was no guarantee that I'd ever find firm ground. But if I stopped, there was only one fate waiting for me. I have to move onward. If staying here guaranteed death, then I'd rather try to walk, even if I die as a result. Even if there was a dead end ahead of me, at least I tried my hardest. In general, I try to be optimistic. I could accept my life not lasting particularly long, but I wouldn't go easily. I'd struggle as much as possible. I had already killed the hag. For that, there could be no other punishment than death. I knew my life would end soon. In other words, I was actually already dead.
死人がなおもあがこうとしたら、そりゃ特攻あるのみでしょ。
I clenched my fists tightly as I muttered. Even if I had to die, I couldn't die easily. This was my chance to avenge Satoshi-kun. Who did it? For what purpose? And why? I was going to investigate. I was going to question. I was going to expose. Yes, I was going to settle the score. I'd carry out the plan I came up with yesterday. I could hide the hag's death somehow. All I had to have to say is that she hadn't been feeling well since Watanagashi. I could do it all while pretending to be Mion. Just in case her friends at school became suspicious, maybe I'd start telling them I hadn't been feeling well either. In fact, I did feel groggy from my lack of sleep. When I became Mion, Shion would automatically disappear. I'd already told Kasai that I snuck into the shrine storage, so he'd probably end up telling people that I was demoned away due to the curse of Oyashiro-sama. The last person I'd have to think about was the fourth one who snuck into the ritual storehouse, Keiichi Maibara. God damn, I'm out of breath. Maybe I can use him as bait to lure out the enemy. Sorry, Kei-chan, you're going to be my bait. I felt a little bad since I was starting to like him. With all that figured out, let's go to school. I'd gone to school as Mion before, so I knew how things worked. It was almost time to leave the house. Yep, I'm sure this'll go well.
みーちゃん、遅い遅い。待っててくれたわけ？先に行っちゃってもよかったのに。
あれ、ミオン、お前顔が赤くないか？息も妙に荒いし。
みーちゃん、ひょっとして具合悪くない？
Rena put her hand on my forehead.
レナの手、冷たいな。みーちゃん、ちょっとだけど熱あるよ。そんな大したことないよ。半日もすればケロッと治っちゃうって。
本当に大丈夫かよ。あんまり無理するなよ。
あれ、ケイちゃん、気遣ってくれるの？嬉しいな。
I'd always thought he was a goofball, so I was a little surprised. I thought they would tease me, but they didn't.
無理しない方がいいと思うな。先生にはお休みだって伝えとくよ。大丈夫大丈夫。風邪薬も飲んだし、すぐに効いてくると思うから。
じゃあ行こうか。くれぐれも無理するなよ。って言いながら、時間！
走らないと、間に合わない。スリリングな朝になっちゃったね。鈍った体にはちょうどいいカツかもね。走ろ。
I think I remember that part. I was going to ask, like, is this lining up with what was talked about at this point in time in Chapter 3? Or Chapter 2?
起立！気をつけ！
I wonder if there were any hints back in Chapter 2 that really showed, from our perspective as Keiichi, that something was amiss with Mion. To show that that wasn't actually Mion. I'd made the same mistake before. I never learned, do I?
みーちゃん、本当に大丈夫かな？今日は具合悪そう。あら、そうなんですの。それはよくありませんわね。
It was a good idea to make them believe I was sick. Even if I did things differently from Mion, I had an excuse.
まあ、あれだ。女の子には体調が悪くなる日もあるってことだな。
僕にはそんな日はないのですよ。みぱー。
God damn it. Mion's friends kept each other occupied and left me alone. If you guys ever have a bad day, just watch one of those videos where it's like a compilation of Rika saying Nipa and me. Keiichi Maibara. He might suddenly disappear one day, and I couldn't let that happen. That would be like letting a fish take the bait and swim away while I was fast asleep with a fishing pole in my hands. I couldn't miss the moment the enemy took a bite out of Keiichi. I had to be very careful. But it was impossible to keep my eyes on him 24 hours a day. Spying on him at school like this wasn't good enough. Should I have him meet with Shion and let her explain that he's in danger? Maybe we could set up a strategy together. I didn't think Keiichi realized how serious a crime it was to step into the ritual storehouse. I hadn't, after all. Since last year, all the incidents that related to the curse had probably been investigated in secret. People involved with the three families would know about the incident from last night, but Keiichi shouldn't know anything. If he knew where he stood now, he'd be more cautious too. That should make him aware of his surroundings, and maybe he would notice if anything odd took place. The teacher caught him sleeping, so she ordered him to go wash his face. He walked out into the hallway. This is where he, well, this is the same day, right, that he went to go talk with Rika, I think? I was sleepy too. I had to be alert, but I couldn't clear my mind due to my lack of sleep. So, if I remember correctly at this point in time, could Keiichi also be thinking about this? Or maybe that's tomorrow. Maybe that's something that happens in the next day? I don't know. We'll figure it out. I can't remember shit. I decided to go home early. Since I'd been pretending to be sick since morning, my request was approved. As I exited the building, I saw Keiichi washing his face. Okay, it's probably the next day. But we're going to probably ask him here.
やっぱケイちゃんはこっちの流しを選んだか。表の方が気分いいもんね。
あ、ミオンか。授業サボるなよな。
It looked like it felt refreshing for him to wash his face with cold water. I'm actually curious. I hadn't done this since like chapter 1 or 2. What's the button again? P. Okay. I want to see what his other sprite looks like. Oh my god. Why are we not using this style? This is the best style for Keiichi. This really encapsulates. This really pictures how he is. Let's go with that. Oh, this is even better. What the fuck? Alright. Enough fucking around. I almost said mucking around. Too much crab game. It looked like it felt refreshing for him to wash his face with cold water. I washed my face too. But it didn't feel as good as it looked. It always hurts.
風邪の方はいいのかよ。眠いのは寝不足じゃなくて、風邪薬の副作用なんだろ？
あはは、実は内緒なんだけど、昨日はお祭りの後で親族の宴会に巻き込まれちゃってさ。
Okay, so I do remember this conversation, mostly because I watched this part of the anime not too long ago. It is coming back to me.
それで、エンドレスに。
Gulp. I pretended to drink with an invisible glass.
徹夜明けかよ。心配して損した。
Keiichi exaggerated his reaction, but he still seemed worried.
じゃあな、俺は教室に戻るぜ。帰りは気をつけろよ。ふらふらして、側溝や用水路に落ちるなよ。
Keiichi turned around to go back to the classroom.
あ、そうそう、ケイちゃん。
Oh, we're gonna question him. I stopped Keiichi. He, in response, turned around. But why are we gonna question him? Like, we know what we're gonna question him about. And Mion would have the exact, normal reasoning for wanting to ask him this. Why are we, Shion, pretending to be Mion, asking this question, which would be normal for Mion, not necessarily for Shion?
変なことを聞くけど、深く考えないで答えてね。
What's your goal here?
それは内容によりけりだな。
昨日の綿流しの晩さ、富武さんと高野さんに会わなかった？
I noticed Keiichi's body tense up. His reaction proved that he felt guilty about sneaking into the ritual storehouse. He was frightened that Mion Sonozaki might know about it. I guess this was enough to give him a certain impression of Mion Sonozaki.
富武さんと高野さんはわかるよね。ほら、ケイちゃん、お祭りの前日準備の時、シオンと一緒に4人でお話ししてたでしょ？
I could clearly see how dismayed Keiichi felt. He was trying to come up with an excuse.
さあ、どうかな。あったような、合わなかったような。
Oh, it's so cool being from this angle. He was both a bad liar and a bad actor. He wasn't really that intelligent at all. Well, that would make him a suitable friend for Mion. He was just a brat, unlike Satoshi-kun. Although, when it came to lying and acting, Satoshi-kun was at about the same level. Maybe Keiichi should be credited for at least trying to tell a lie. Satoshi-kun wouldn't have even said a thing. I didn't need to be thinking about him right now. And yet here we are.
じゃあもう一つ質問ね。同じく昨べ、シオンに会わなかった？
This was a very mean question. Keiichi was perplexed, as I'd expected.
それ、昨日も聞いたよな。
Maybe we're trying to mold him into the perfect bait. Him being guilty. Him being, I guess feeling like a, not a suspect, but a person of interest, if you will, of everything that's going on. He's going to be the center of things. Make him feel like he is the bait before he's actually acting as the bait. Right? That sounds smart, right?
俺、あったかどうかわからないって答えたと思ったぜ。
Huh? I'd asked him that yesterday? He must have meant that Mion Sonozaki asked him that question. In other words, she asked him she asked him that after he left the storehouse and got back together with his friends. Damn you, Mion. When I asked her, she said she had no idea when we went into the ritual storehouse. Shit.
そうだっけ？また改めて聞いたら、違う答えが返ってくるかなって思ってさ。
There's our hint. There's our hint. Even so, that's a reasonable, statement, and a very untrustworthy one at that. I did not think anything of it at the time. I probably was just spooked.
どうしてあったかどうかをそんなに気にするんだよ。
He was getting defensive. Keiichi couldn't hide his panic as he flared up at me.
大したことじゃないの。 富武さんと高野さんとシオンとケイちゃんをね、悪く言ってる人たちがいるの。何が悪いんだかはよく聞いてないんだけどね。
Keiichi was really perplexed now. This wasn't fun at all, but it could still be an interesting game.
私、ケイちゃんが悪いことをするなんて信じてないから。でも、ちょっとだけ聞いてみたかったから聞いてみたの。不愉快な思いをさせてごめんね。
I made sure Keiichi felt a sense of crisis and then left. Wowzers. Nobody can tell us apart. We're Mion and Shion, perfect twins. Yeah, it's really paying off now, isn't it? Damn, I really should have seen that as a hint that things can get fucky. What if there was like a point in chapter 3 as well where this happened? I would not have known. Okay, we are going to end it short just in case, but I think I figured out what the problem was with my recording, because I did make a little adjustment before I recorded again. I had a window capture instead of a game capture for a game that I'm recording, because the game capture works with it, but whenever there's like a cutscene, it doesn't capture it. So that was a problem. I had to do a window capture for the entire game if I wanted to have everything captured. And I think there's a bug with OBS right now where it will close if it doesn't find that window after a certain amount of time or something. Who knows? Maybe while I'm doing this outro, the game will just crash and I'm fucked. Everything I just predicted is wrong. But recording for almost 20 minutes, which I think is the longest I've recorded this game as of late, I think we're okay. So next time we'll do a little bit longer of a session, because I definitely want to see what Shion does, acting as Mion. I feel like, you know, what comes up next is she's gonna pretend to be Shion, then she's going, well, pretend to be Shion. She's gonna go back to being herself for a bit, pretend to know as much as she would know, I guess. She's not in trouble or anything, everything's fine on her end, but she's starting to feel guilt or whatever. She's gonna spread information to worry Keiichi. Then when Ueshi comes in, then she's going to make herself disappear. I think that's what's going to happen here. I could be wrong. I don't know. But thank you all for watching this episode. Sorry for the little hiccup there halfway through it. I thought I had fixed the issue before, but I think we're good now for the next one. So next time, I will try to have a decently long episode to make up for this. If I don't, you guys can hit me. If you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, all that fancy jazz. And I hope you guys have a good one. And I hope to, of course, see you guys in the next episode. Take it easy.